Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and today we're getting an update on Goliath Resources. Goliath is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker GOT, and on the OTCQB under the ticker GOTRF. And I'm joined today with the founder and CEO of Goliath Resources, Roger Rosmus. And Roger, great to get you on the show as always to get an update on Goliath. The drilling continues here. We've got 5 different holes that you released to the market yesterday. And in these holes, there's some mineable widths. There's some good grades. You put 5 holes out that touch the Surebet and the Bonanza Shear Discovery. And you really are putting more color on the picture. You're increasing the volume and the size of the mineralization at the Bonanza Shear Zone. Now, on these holes, the headline holes here, you talk about 130 grams per ton gold equivalent over 1 meter, and then 33.8, so almost 34 grams per ton gold equivalent over 3 meters in the Bonanza zone. But there's some other areas that have wider intercepts. There's some other areas where you're learning more detail. I guess from a big picture sense, as you stack these 5 holes into the mix here, what have you learned about this area of the deposit?
Yeah, as far as the learning about the system here, as you know, we had 92% of our holes had visible gold. So, I think we've got a high probability suggests that we'll continue to have gold in all the holes. So, if someone goes into detail and looks at every hole, we've actually hit gold in every hole. So what does that tell us? Is that there's a lot of gold here. And with the drilling we did, obviously we were able to intercept the Surebet up in the sediments up above, which all again came in line with what we've been thinking all along, kind of this 5 to kind of to 6 meters maybe on average, and kind of maybe sort of 4.5 maybe to 6 grams per ton gold equivalent. Certainly from the hole 262, there was actually 4 meters of just over an ounce material on 262, and then quickly to 273, we had almost 6 grams per ton gold equivalent over 5 meters. Again, mineable width, mineable grades. And then hole 272, roughly 4.7 grams per ton gold equivalent over 4 meters. Again, sort of a mineable width, mineable grade. And I do want to point out, though, that as well, is that if people look back and like GD 2271, so that was drilled in 2022, and this is all within kind of a 500-meter radius of these holes we've announced today. We got 11 meters of almost 8 grams per ton gold equivalent. And then in 2023, hole 221, again, there was about 13 meters of almost 4.5 grams per ton gold equivalent there. So that tells us, guess what? The continuity is there, consistency, and that grade kind of continues to be kind of in that particular zone. And then obviously with Bonanza, the key point here, the key point takeaway is that hole 272 hitting the mineralization, most northern part of our Bonanza zone there. So that confirms, guess what? 700 and change mineralization is still existing to the north. And then obviously hole 273, which is off to the west there, most westerly area that, we also have mineralization as well. We do have that high grade 1 ounce kind of intercept, but ultimately it sits within almost, 5 grams over almost 9 meters. Again, so mineable width, mineable grade. So with the sell-off yesterday, I don't know if people actually took the time to read in detail what the news was all about, but I think people are going to sell, they're going to sell, so nothing we can do about it. We'll just continue to hopefully release decent results, and the market will eventually catch on as to what the heck is going on here.
Well, Roger, just to that point, I was looking at some of the chatter online yesterday, and there was a few people that were saying, well, these are just really thin. The mineralization's only a meter. But to your point, I'm not sure if they actually read the full press release or looked at the table that's included. But there's a lot of intercepts, as you just highlighted, 3 meters, 5 meters, or within the areas of some of the prior holes, 11 meters, 13 meters. So even the holes 255 and 244 that you don't go as in depth on still had a 3-meter intercept and a 5-meter intercept roughly. So when you think about how the color is being filled in here on the picture, I think one of the big statements out of the press release is that you've nearly doubled the volume of the mineralized area, the size of it, for Bonanza. So maybe to speak to how all of these holes are tying into the bigger picture.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're hitting the various zones, but for us, obviously the Surebet, everything up in the SEDS, it's going to be important because again, there's a lot of potential tonnage. I think I did the math kind of roughly kind of between, if it is average kind of 5 to 6 meters, tonnage, we're looking at, possibly 28 million to 30 some odd million tons of material. It's going to be all economical. I have no idea. Obviously, we just need more drill points or pierce points in the system. And then, with Bonanza again, confirming that we had mineralization at hole 272, it just demonstrates that, the continuity is there. And again, people have to understand we were hitting this vein or these sets of veins within, plus or minus 5 meters. So extremely robust, very predictable. And, once we have all of our assays in for the year and out, we can update our model. And, for 2025, this year, we can go in with like laser focused and know again where the super higher grade zones are, and kind of just follow those that part of the vein system, and we can build some really robust potential tonnage here in 2025.
Well, the other thing that strikes me, and it struck me every time you put out a press release this year, is that when you're referencing the overall 2024 drill program, 59 out of the 64 holes had visible gold, as you mentioned, 92% of them. But all of these holes you just put out, all 5 of these are mineralized. So I think when people compare your prior drill results to the drill results you put out this time, people like to look at, well, was it as huge or was it as big of a bonanza grade as the last one? Well, not every single hole is going to be out of this program, but every hole was mineralized. That's not something that most exploration companies can claim. They definitely can't claim the 92% have visible gold, but just the consistency that your exploration team is hitting is another thing I think it would be nice to speak to. The consistency of the mineralization, but also just how well they vectored into these different areas from all these different drill pads.
Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, for me, I've never seen a hit rate of 92% VG in a vein type system. Typically in a vein type system, as as well, you're kind of hitting and missing. But to your point, we've actually hit on every hole. Every hole has gold in it, and with mineable widths, mineable grades. So again, read the fine print. There's something really special going on here, and sooner or later, well, the big boys have caught on, like and I just think it's maybe the other part of the audience, the day traders and so on, seeing an opportunity. If they're going to sell, they're going to sell no matter what the results say. So again, with 92% having BG, we expect that we'll continue to deliver decent results for the balance of this holes as well. In addition to, we've got quite a few holes, in particular in the Bonanza area, this high grade gold area. We're seeing this 1 ounce over 1 ounce material up to 9 meters, and we've got another, I guess, like 10 or 12 holes that are still due to come. So, but again, not every hole is going to be 5-10 meters of over an ounce. As long as we're hitting mineralization, confirming the continuity of the system. I mean, that's the key point here.
Well, and the other thing you just said is there's a lot of holes still to release here. So you've already put out a lot of good results so far this year, but you're still early on in releasing the assays because it took a little while from the lab to get these coming back in. Just remind people that some of the other holes that you drilled may get into different zones because I think there's something like 10 different stacked lenses and veins here now altogether in the Surebet Discovery. And then just as a reminder, you also have other pockets and other areas of mineralization that you've tested that are either, regional targets or step out targets like Jackpot and Treasure Island. You haven't released yet either. But just in the Surebet Discovery, talk about how some of the future holes may also intersect other mineralized areas.
Yeah, definitely. As you can see or demonstrated by this news release, multiple intervals of various veins. So we do have the stacked vein set of, call it 10 veins, and just based on the drilling, because we're drilling from the side of the mountain, you're typically going to at least hit, definitely 1 or 2. As you go lower in the mountain, then you're only going to maybe, if we're just shooting for the Bonanza, we may intercept that particular vein. But for the most part, the drilling is planned where we can get multiple intercepts of the various other veins, just again, this additional data points. So, when it does come time to put a maiden resource together, we do have that data point because it's a more of a cost-effective way of doing the drilling for us.
Well, Roger, I continue to get people sending me questions saying, when are they going to put out a resource? And so while we've talked about this before in prior interviews, I think we should at least touch on it one more time here, and that is that it's still so early days. I mean, you've just started finding things like the new deep feeder zone, not to mention that reduced intrusion area, the mothership feeder area that you hit in the first hole you released for the year. There's still other areas that you just found at surface, like Blue Origin, that's kind of a step out target about a kilometer and a half away. There's all these other areas that you're still testing, like Jackpot, that's again another kilometer away. Isn't it a bit premature to start talking about a resource at this point based on the data that's coming in?
Yeah, Shad, I definitely would concur with you. The big question is how big is it? And I got to tell you, we have no idea. This thing is obviously extremely large. The more we drill, the bigger it gets. Versus in most scenarios, new discoveries, the more you drill, the smaller it gets. So ours is in the inverse. So, why would we want to cap this thing? So we'll continue to drill, test the edges, to that point. Everything does remain wide open still at this point, that depth, and to the north, to the east, to the west. So it's very exciting times for the shareholders.
Well, in addition to a lot of the holes that you drilled this year, I think another parallel initiative was that you were relogging some other holes. Could you maybe speak to what that initiative was about?
It really had to go with the fact that we found visible gold in the intrusive, this reduced intrusive style of mineralization within the dikes, which actually run north-south, versus, the vein sets that we have are running kind of, dipping to the south-southwest. And so we do feel that these dikes may have been part of the pathways that brought mineralization to the entire system. And just to see visible gold, bismuth, moly within this type of host rock, a very powerful system that brought this mineralization to the Surebet. So clearly the mothership or feeder source, whatever you want to call it, is I think it's going to be something that's going to be extremely large, and hopefully we can tap into it at some point. Ultimately, if we don't, we still have got a lot of material here, and certainly has the makings of a world-class discovery here on our hands.
Well, and just from a big picture, we've talked about there maybe being 10 to 12 more holes that still pierce through the Surebet and Bonanza shear area. But about how many more holes do you have from the overall program still to release this year, Roger?
Yeah, well, we've got, we'll release the 5 like we did 2 earlier. So we've got about just sort of mid-50s, I guess. Mid-50s, I think about 58, plus or minus. So we've got lots to go for this year. The relogging that you mentioned, that was 17 holes that we drilled from 2021 to 2023. This is the reduced intrusive stuff, porphyritic dike material with the VG. And then we had another 17 holes that was recommended we relog because we may have not captured all the gold on the shoulders of some of the intercepts. And then we have 12 holes, again, assays pending, that we drilled up at Treasure Island, which, we had 4 pads, 12 holes, of which the best hole from each pad, we had roughly on average 30 meters of mineralization. And then within that 30 meters from each hole, there's roughly 7 meters of this massive to semi-massive looking material. Why that's important is because we took channel cuts that looks similar, very similar to the drill core that ran. We had a channel cut that ran, I guess it was about 28 grams per ton gold equivalent. There was about 5% copper as well. Of note, at Treasure Island, we had up to 14% copper in some of the samples. So, we're looking forward to obviously seeing what's happening there. Mind you, the main focus of the business here is Surebet, which is the main flagship, and with the idea that once all the Treasure Island assays are completed, that we would release all those together just to give it the whole area context as to what the results mean.
Yeah, so I think the main takeaway here is that you got a lot of new holes still to report, over 50 some that are still coming in, not to mention all of the holes that you've relogged that you're going to have assays coming out on. So for those that are looking for catalysts, for those that are looking for exploration results, there's still a lot on tap that are going to be released over the next month or two, maybe couple months, depending on how they come back from the lab. So a lot of news flow still to come from Goliath. And for those that are listening in, if you want to follow along with the news, definitely click on the link below this interview. It takes you right over to the company website, straight to their news section. You can also sign up for updates where you just get a result to your email inbox every time results come out to the marketplace. Roger, I'm sure we'll be talking a lot over that time period because there's a lot of results still on tap. And as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, appreciate it, Shad. And hopefully you look forward to seeing you at VRIC there and Roundup in Vancouver here shortly.